The metallic corridors of the Stellar Seeker hummed with the usual background noise of life support systems and gravity generators. Marcus Thompson walked through them with an easy stride, feeling the slight bounce in his step from the ship's artificial gravity being set slightly lower than Earth standard. Around him, crew members in bulky environmental suits turned their heads to stare. He understood their confusion. While they needed complex filtration systems and pressure regulation just to survive in the ship's atmosphere, he wore only the standard ship uniform, a simple blue jumpsuit with the Galactic Council's insignia. The fact that he could breathe the ship's air without assistance made him an oddity among the crew. "Human Thompson, you are expected on the bridge," the ship's AI announced through the overhead speakers. Marcus smiled at the formal address and changed direction, heading toward the command center. He knew what this was about: their arrival at GX-291, a planet that the Council considered extremely hostile to life. The bridge doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a space filled with crystalline beings in their environmental suits. Captain Red stood at the center, their crystalline form glowing with a soft crimson light. The captain's environmental suit was more elaborate than the others, with additional layers of protection and backup systems. "You requested my presence, Captain?" Marcus asked, standing at ease. He noticed several crew members adjusting their suit filters, probably due to his contaminating presence in the room. It had taken weeks for them to accept that humans didn't need to be quarantined. "Yes," Captain Red's translated voice came through their suit's speakers. "We are approaching the target planet. Our sensors indicate atmospheric toxicity levels that exceed safety parameters. The Council wants your unique perspective on the situation." Marcus walked to the main viewing screen, studying the planet below. GX-291 was a swirling mass of greens and browns, its atmosphere thick with what the aliens considered lethal compounds. To his trained eye, it looked remarkably similar to Earth during its Industrial Revolution. "The atmospheric composition is fascinating," he said, reading the data scrolling across a nearby screen. "High levels of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter. Reminds me of London in the 1950s. The bridge crew exchanged confused glances. Blue, the ship's medical officer, stepped forward, their crystalline form shimmering with concerned azure pulses. "Human Thompson, perhaps there is an error in the translation. You speak as if your species has encountered these conditions before." Marcus couldn't help but grin. "We have. In fact, humans lived through worse during our industrial development. Cities full of millions of people continued their daily lives in conditions more toxic than what I'm seeing here." A wave of shocked movements rippled through the bridge crew. Captain Red's crystalline structure flickered with disbelief. "Impossible. Our historical records show that such conditions are lethal to most carbon-based life forms." "Most, yes," Marcus agreed, "but humans are surprisingly adaptable. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. A little air pollution isn't going to stop us." The captain's next words came slowly, as if they were struggling with the concept. "The Council classified your world as a death world, but we assumed this was due to your planet's predatory life forms. Are you saying your species survived atmospheric conditions that would disable our environmental suits?" Marcus nodded, studying the planet's readings more closely. "Not just survived. We thrived, built civilizations, had picnics, went to work. Sure, it wasn't healthy, but we managed. That's why I was assigned to this mission. Your environmental suits can't handle these conditions, but I can." The silence on the bridge was broken only by the soft whirring of environmental suit filters. Blue's medical sensors were frantically scanning Marcus, their display showing readings that probably made no sense to their understanding of biology. "The Council will need to update their species capability database," Captain Red finally said. "But for now, we have a mission to complete. Human Thompson, I want a full assessment of the planetary conditions and your recommendations for surface exploration." Marcus turned from the screen, noting how the other crew members were looking at him with new eyes. or whatever sensory organs their species used. He wasn't just a curiosity anymore. He was living proof that their understanding of safe environments was far too narrow. "I'll have the report ready in an hour, Captain," he said, already mentally cataloging the equipment he'd need. "But I can tell you now, those environmental suits of yours won't be necessary for my part of the mission." 3 hours into their orbital scan of GX-291, the Stellar Seeker sensors detected something unusual. Marcus leaned closer to the display screen, watching as the data streams highlighted a cluster of unusual mineral formations near the planet's equator. The readings were unlike anything in the Galactic Council's database. "Another probe malfunction," one of the sensor operators announced, their crystalline form dimming with frustration. The 6th automated probe of the day had just stopped transmitting after descending into the planet's corrosive atmosphere. The expensive devices, designed to withstand extreme conditions, were failing faster than expected. Marcus watched the last video feed from the probe before it died. Through the swirling toxic clouds, he caught glimpses of what looked like crystalline formations jutting from the ground. They reminded him of the salt flats back on Earth, but these seemed to pulse with an inner light. "Captain," he called out, "those formations look artificial. The patterns are too regular to be natural." He pointed to the screen, tracing the geometric shapes visible in the final frames of footage. Captain Red moved closer, their environmental suit whirring as its filters worked overtime to process the ship's already clean air. "Interesting observation, Human Thompson. But we cannot confirm without surface samples, and our probes cannot survive long enough to collect them. The atmospheric composition is similar to what we once had in our industrial centers," Marcus said, pulling up Earth's historical atmospheric data on a nearby screen. "Look at these readings from Beijing in 2039. The sulfur dioxide levels were actually higher than what we're seeing on GX-291. Blue, who had been quietly analyzing the probe's damage reports, joined the conversation. "But Human Thompson, our suits are failing due to rapid corrosion. How did your species handle such conditions?" "We adapted," Marcus replied simply. "Created better materials, developed new technologies. But more importantly, our bodies learned to deal with it. We're not as fragile as you might think." A sudden alert interrupted their discussion. One of the sensor operators called out, "Captain, we've detected an energy signature from the surface. It's faint, but it matches no known natural phenomenon in our database." The bridge crew gathered around the main display as new data streamed in. The energy signature pulsed in a regular pattern, almost like a beacon, but each probe they sent to investigate failed before getting close enough to gather detailed readings. Marcus studied the pattern, his mind racing with possibilities. "Captain, I have a suggestion. Instead of sending more probes, let me go down there." The crystalline crew members all turned to stare at him. Captain Red's form flickered with what Marcus had learned to recognize as concern. "Without an environmental suit, impossible. The atmosphere would kill you." "Not necessarily," Marcus countered, pulling up more data on his screen. "The toxicity levels are well within human tolerance ranges. We've got historical records of humans working in worse conditions during our Industrial Revolution. I'd need an oxygen mask and goggles to protect my eyes. But that's it." "But the corrosive elements," Blue started to protest. "Will be an annoyance, nothing more," Marcus finished. "Human skin is remarkably resistant, and our lungs, while not happy about it, can handle these conditions for short periods. We're talking about a few hours of exposure, not long-term habitation." The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of environmental suit filters. Marcus could almost feel the alien's shock at his casual dismissal of what they considered lethal conditions. But he knew human history, knew how his species had not just survived, but thrived in conditions that would horrify these aliens. Captain Red's crystalline form pulsed with rapid color changes as they processed the suggestion. Finally, they spoke. The Council's mission parameters did not account for this possibility, but they also did not explicitly forbid it. "Human Thompson, prepare a detailed proposal for a surface expedition. Include all relevant historical data about human survival in similar conditions. Marcus nodded, already mentally preparing his report. As he left the bridge, he heard the aliens discussing among themselves, their translated voices filled with a mixture of concern and curiosity. They still didn't fully understand what it meant to come from a death world, but they were about to find out. The ship's conference room buzzed with tense energy as Marcus finished presenting his surface expedition proposal. The crystalline crew members sat rigidly in their environmental suits, their forms flickering with various colors that betrayed their emotional states. Captain Red's usual steady crimson glow pulsed with darker shades, a sign Marcus had learned to recognize as deep concern. "This is madness," the captain said, their translated voice firm. "You propose to walk on the surface with nothing but an oxygen mask and protective goggles. The atmospheric acid levels alone would eat through organic material." Marcus pulled up another historical image on the main screen. It showed ancient Earth photographs of miners working in heavy industrial zones, their faces covered with simple cloth masks. "My species has worked in similar conditions for centuries. Look at these sulfur miners from Earth's volcanic regions. They managed with far less protection than what I'm proposing." Blue's medical sensors whirred as they analyzed the images, but the chemical composition of GX-291's atmosphere shows concentrated levels of hydrochloric acid vapor. "Our strongest environmental suits barely withstand it." "Because they're designed for your biology," Marcus explained patiently. "Human skin has natural acids in it. Our sweat is acidic. We've evolved dealing with corrosive substances. What burns through your crystalline forms barely irritates our skin." An engineer named Green stepped forward, their form shimmering with analytical patterns. "Human Thompson, I've reviewed Earth's historical data. Your species suffered greatly during your industrial period. Many died from atmospheric toxins." "Yes, over long-term exposure," Marcus agreed. "But I'm talking about a short surface expedition, a few hours at most. Our bodies can handle short-term exposure to these conditions. It's not comfortable, but it's far from lethal." Captain Red projected a hologram of the planet's surface conditions. "The temperature variations alone are within normal ranges humans encounter on Earth," Marcus interrupted. "The hottest point is comparable to Death Valley in summer. The coldest is like a mild winter day in Canada. We handle these temperatures regularly." The crew exchanged glances, their crystalline forms reflecting their disbelief. Marcus understood their concern. To them, such temperature swings without protective gear seemed as impossible as surviving in open space. Blue's medical expertise prompted another objection. "The atmospheric pressure is 30% higher than your Earth standard." Marcus smiled. "Humans regularly dive to depths with much greater pressure differences. We call it swimming. Some do it for fun. Look," he pulled up more historical data. "During Earth's Industrial Revolution, entire cities lived with air quality worse than GX-291. London's Great Smog of 1952 had pollution levels twice what we're seeing here." People went about their daily lives. The room fell silent as the aliens processed this information. Their species, evolved in stable, pristine environments, struggled to comprehend such adaptation capabilities. "The Council classified Earth as a death world," Captain Red said slowly. "But perhaps we never fully understood what that meant. Your species didn't just survive harsh conditions. You thrived in them." "Exactly," Marcus replied. "What you see as an incredibly hostile environment is just another Tuesday for us. Yes, it's not ideal. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But lethal. Not even close." The captain's form pulsed with rapid color changes as they considered the proposal. "The scientific value of direct surface exploration would be significant. Our probes keep failing, and those energy signatures need investigation." Green spoke up again. "If Human Thompson is correct about his species' capabilities, he could accomplish in hours what our automated systems have failed to do in days." Marcus watched as the alien crew members communicated in their own way, their crystalline forms sharing pulses of light in patterns he couldn't interpret. Finally, Captain Red turned to face him. "I will permit this expedition," they announced, "but with conditions. You will carry our best monitoring equipment. At the first sign of physical distress, you return immediately, and you will maintain constant communication with the ship." Marcus nodded, hiding his amusement at their concern. To them, he was about to attempt something impossibly dangerous. To him, it was just another field mission, barely more hazardous than the polluted zones he'd worked in back on Earth. "When do we start?" he asked, already eager to begin. The crisis struck without warning. The Stellar Seeker's latest probe, carrying their most advanced sensor package, had just begun its descent toward the mysterious energy signatures when things went wrong. Instead of the usual rapid failure, this probe spiraled out of control, its navigation system scrambled by something from the surface. Marcus watched from the bridge as the probe's trajectory turned into a fatal dive. The expensive piece of equipment, worth more than a small spaceship, plummeted through the toxic atmosphere toward the very formations they had been trying to study. Impact in 30 seconds, the sensor operator announced, their crystalline form dimming with distress. "The probe's memory core is still intact. All our scanning data from the past week is stored in there." Captain Red's form pulsed with urgent patterns. "Can we activate the emergency retrieval system?" "Negative," Green replied from the engineering station. "All probe systems are dead. It's just falling now." The bridge crew watched helplessly as their most valuable research tool crashed into the planet's surface. The impact sent up a spray of caustic dust, briefly visible on their monitors before the toxic clouds swallowed it up. "Location fixed," the sensor operator reported. "The probe landed 2 kilometers from the primary energy signature we detected. But in this atmosphere," they didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew their environmental suits couldn't handle prolonged exposure to the surface conditions. Marcus stepped forward, studying the crash site data. "The probe's memory core is designed to survive impact. If we can reach it quickly, we might be able to recover not just our research data, but also whatever caused it to malfunction." Blue's medical sensors whirred anxiously. "The corrosive atmosphere will destroy the memory core within hours. Our suits would fail before any rescue team could reach it." "Then it's a good thing you have me," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I can get there in less than an hour on foot. The terrain looks manageable, and the conditions are well within my tolerance range." Captain Red turned to face him, their crystalline structure emanating concern. "Human Thompson, this is different from your proposed research expedition. We haven't had time to prepare properly." "The risk factors are the same as they were yesterday," Marcus interrupted. "The only difference is now we have no choice. That probe contains vital data about the planet's unusual properties, data the Council needs. Not to mention, if something down there can disable our most advanced probe, we need to know what it is." The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of environmental suit filters. Marcus could see the conflict in their reactions, their need for the data versus their genuine concern for his safety. "The atmospheric toxicity levels have actually increased since this morning," Blue noted, checking their instruments. "The crash seems to have stirred up more acidic compounds in the area." Marcus walked to the equipment locker near the bridge entrance. "Good thing humans are hardy then. Captain, every minute we wait is another minute that memory core spends in corrosive conditions. I need your decision now." The captain's form flickered through a rapid sequence of colors before stabilizing. "This goes against every safety protocol in the Council's handbook, but we need that data." They turned to Blue. "Prepare the minimal protective gear Human Thompson requested. Green, modify our best portable scanner to withstand the atmosphere." The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. Marcus stripped down to his basic uniform, while Blue helped him check his oxygen mask seals. Green handed him a reinforced scanner, modified with extra shielding against the caustic environment. "The probe's emergency beacon is still transmitting," the sensor operator reported. "We can guide you to its exact location." Marcus nodded, checking his equipment one final time. "Remember, Don't panic if my skin shows chemical irritation. It's normal and expected. Just monitor my core temperature and oxygen levels. As he headed toward the shuttle bay, Captain Red called after him. Human Thompson, good luck. Try not to die. Marcus grinned behind his mask. Captain, my species has survived far worse than a little acid rain and toxic air. Keep the sensors running. I have a feeling we're about to discover something interesting down there. The shuttle's descent through GX 291's atmosphere felt like flying through soup. Marcus sat calmly in the pilot's seat as the small craft shuddered around him. The vessel's automated systems would handle most of the landing. His job would begin once they touched down. Atmospheric acid levels are 50% higher than our worst projections. Blue's worried voice came through his communicator. The medical officer had insisted on monitoring his vital signs personally. Marcus watched as caustic rain streaked across the shuttle's viewports. Reminds me of acid rain back home during the bad years. Nothing I haven't seen before. He didn't mention that his grandfather used to tell stories about swimming in lakes with worse pH levels than what he was seeing now. The shuttle broke through the lower clouded layer, revealing the landscape below. Sharp crystalline formations jutted from the ground like massive teeth, their surfaces gleaming with an oily sheen from the toxic precipitation. The crashed probe lay in a small valley between two of these formations, its metal shell already showing signs of corrosion. Beginning final descent, Marcus reported. Surface visibility is better than expected. Those formations seem to be channeling the worst of the acid clouds away from the valley. The shuttle's landing gear extended, and Marcus felt the slight bump as they touched down. Warning lights flashed across his console as the vessel's external sensors registered the hostile environment. He could hear the soft patter of acid rain against the hull. Human Thompson, Captain Red's voice crackled through his comm. Final system check before you exit. Marcus ran through his minimalist gear checklist. Oxygen mask sealed properly. Protective goggles secure. Basic uniform intact. The reinforced scanner hung at his belt, along with a sample collection kit. He had deliberately avoided the bulky environmental suits the aliens relied on. They would only slow him down. All systems go, he reported, then added with a hint of humor, though I wouldn't really call an oxygen mask and goggles a system. The shuttle's airlock cycled, and Marcus got his first direct whiff of the planet's atmosphere through his mask's filters. The air had a sharp industrial smell that reminded him of the manufacturing districts back on Earth. His exposed skin tingled as it made contact with the caustic environment, but it was nothing worse than a mild sunburn. Beginning surface operation, he reported, stepping onto the rocky ground. His boots splashed in puddles of what would be considered deadly acid by his alien companions. Skin contact with atmosphere established. Mild irritation, well within expected parameters. He could hear multiple sharp intakes of breath through his comm as the alien crew watched his life signs. To them, what he was doing was akin to swimming in lava. To him, it felt like a particularly smoggy day in an industrial zone. Your skin readings, Blue started, their voice tense, are perfectly normal. Marcus finished, already walking toward the crash site. Human skin gets irritated by all sorts of things. Hot water, sunshine, new soap. This is no different. Focus on my oxygen levels and core temperature. Those are the only readings that matter. The crystalline formations towered above him as he made his way through the valley. Up close, they seemed to pulse with a faint inner light, responding to his presence. The scanner at his belt picked up unusual energy readings, but he stayed focused on his primary mission, the crashed probe. Interesting geological formations, he commented, keeping up his running narrative for the worried crew. The crystals seemed to be growing in perfect geometric patterns, definitely not natural. And there's some kind of energy signature, but that's for later investigation. He reached the probe after about 15 minutes of careful walking. Its outer casing showed significant damage, both from the impact and the corrosive environment, but the memory core housing looked intact. Found our target, he reported, kneeling beside the wreckage. Caustic mud soaked through his uniform pants, causing more concerned noises from his audience. Minor chemical burns beginning on exposed skin, nothing serious. Like a bad case of swimmer's itch, starting memory core extraction now. As he worked, Marcus couldn't help but smile behind his mask. The alien's worried reactions to every minor skin irritation reading reminded him of his first survival training instructor. A tough old woman who used to say that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their resilience, but their ability to treat deadly serious situations as mere inconveniences. With the probe's memory core secured in his collection kit, Marcus turned his attention to the mysterious energy signatures that had drawn them to this valley. His skin had developed an angry red tinge from the constant exposure to the caustic atmosphere, but he barely noticed it anymore. The mild burning sensation had become background noise, like the constant hum of the ship's engines. Memory core recovered, he reported through his comm, moving to investigate the energy source. These crystal formations are getting more interesting up close. Your epidermis shows significant chemical irritation. Blue's worried voice crackled through his comm. Perhaps you should return to the shuttle. Marcus wiped acidic sweat from his forehead, careful to keep it from getting in his goggles. Back home, we used to have beaches where the water was almost as acidic as these puddles. People would swim in them for fun. This is nothing. He approached the nearest crystal formation, which now pulsed with a stronger inner light. His scanner began picking up increasingly complex energy patterns. The readings made no sense. The crystals seemed to be communicating with each other through some kind of electromagnetic network. "Captain," he called, excitement creeping into his voice. "I think I know what happened to our probe. These aren't just random formations. There's some kind of technology." The crystal nearest to him suddenly flared with brilliant light. Marcus felt a slight tingling sensation, different from the chemical burns on his skin. The scanner in his hand went crazy, its display showing readings that should have been impossible. "Human Thompson." Captain Red's voice carried clear alarm. "Your biological readings are showing unusual patterns." Marcus stayed focused on the crystal. "It's scanning me, just like it scanned the probe. But this is different. It's not trying to disable me. It's learning." The light from the crystal changed color, shifting through various spectrums. Marcus realized that the patterns matched the colors he'd seen in the crystalline crew members when they communicated. "Captain, I think these might be related to your species somehow. The communication patterns are similar." He heard sharp intakes of breath through his comm. The implications were huge. If these structures were indeed ancient technology from the captain's species, it would explain why they reacted so strongly to the probe's crystalline components. "Impossible," Green's voice cut in. "Our species cannot survive in such conditions. We never could have built anything here." Marcus stepped closer to the crystal, ignoring the increasing burn of the acid rain. "Maybe not now. But species change, evolve, adapt." He thought of humanity's own journey from sea creatures to land dwellers to space travelers. "Maybe your ancestors were more resilient than you think." The crystal's light suddenly focused into a tight beam, projecting complex patterns onto the ground. Marcus recognized them as mathematical sequences, prime numbers, Fibonacci series, basic universal constants. This wasn't just technology. It was trying to communicate. "Beginning data recording," he said, setting up his scanner to capture everything. The probe probably crashed because these crystals tried to interface with its systems the same way they interfaced with their original builders. But our modern technology isn't compatible anymore. He worked quickly, gathering readings and samples while the crystals continued their light show. His skin was really starting to burn now, and his throat felt raw despite the mask's filtration. But he couldn't stop. This was too important. "Look at these patterns," he continued, sending data back to the ship. "They're not just mathematical sequences. They're historical records. Your people didn't just visit this planet. They engineered it, created these crystalline databases to store their knowledge. A particularly strong wave of acid rain washed over him, and Marcus finally had to acknowledge his physical discomfort. His uniform was starting to dissolve in places, and the burning sensation had intensified from mild sunburn to serious chemical exposure. "All right," he conceded, backing away from the crystal. "I've got enough preliminary data. Time to head back before Blue has a medical crisis watching my vital signs." As he turned toward the shuttle, the crystal's light dimmed, but didn't fade entirely. They had recognized something in him, not the same biological patterns as their creators, but something equally resilient, something that could survive in their harsh environment long enough to understand their message. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy might not be their technology or their knowledge, but their simple ability to walk through hell and treat it as an inconvenience. The Stellar Seeker's medical bay buzzed with activity as Blue treated Marcus's chemical burns. His skin was raw and red in places where the acid rain had eaten through his uniform, but he barely seemed to notice the discomfort. His attention remained fixed on the holographic display, showing the data they'd recovered from both the probe and the crystal formations. "Remarkable," Captain Red said, their crystalline form pulsing with excited colors as they reviewed the findings. "Our species once thrived in environments we now consider lethal. These records suggest we engineered these crystals as a form of data storage, knowing our bodies would eventually adapt to cleaner environments." Marcus winced slightly as Blue applied a healing gel to his burns. "Evolution is a two-way street. Your ancestors were tough enough to survive in toxic environments, but as their world cleaned up, they adapted to safer conditions. Humans might go the same way eventually." The captain's form flickered thoughtfully. "Yet your species maintains its resilience despite having cleaned up your world. You choose to remember how to survive harsh conditions." "We never really cleaned up everything," Marcus admitted. "Earth still has plenty of toxic zones, dangerous environments, extreme conditions. We just learn to live with them, work around them. Some of us even seek them out for fun." Green, who had been analyzing the probe's recovered memory core, joined the conversation. "The crystal matrices contain millions of data points about our early civilization. But we would never have recovered this information without human assistance. Our environmental suits cannot withstand the conditions long enough to interface with the crystals properly." Blue finished treating the last of Marcus's burns and stepped back, their medical sensors still whirring anxiously. "Your cellular repair rate is fascinating. These burns should take weeks to heal, yet your body is already beginning the recovery process." "Deathworlders," Marcus said with a shrug, then regretted the movement as it pulled at his tender skin. "We're built to take damage and bounce back. It's not just about surviving the hit. It's about getting back up afterward." The ship's communicator chimed, announcing an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. Captain Red's form stabilized into a formal configuration as they accepted the call. The holographic image of a council elder materialized in the medical bay. "We have reviewed your preliminary report." The elder's translated voice filled the room. "The discovery of these ancient records is unprecedented, but we are more intrigued by the method of their recovery." The elder's attention focused on Marcus. "Your species continues to surprise us, Human Thompson." Marcus sat up straighter despite his discomfort. "With respect, Elder, perhaps you shouldn't be surprised. Every species has hidden strengths. We just haven't been looking for them in the right places." The elder's form shifted in what Marcus had learned to recognize as agreement. "The Council is updating our species capability database. We have clearly underestimated both the potential adaptability of our own species and the practical applications of human resilience. We recommend establishing a joint research operation," Captain Red added. "Human teams to handle the hostile environments, our scientists to interpret the data. There could be more sites like this on other worlds we previously considered too dangerous to explore." The elder's hologram flickered with approval. "Agreed. Human Thompson, would you be interested in leading such an expedition? There are several other planets with similar conditions that may hold more of our ancient records." Marcus grinned, ignoring the sting of his healing burns, walking through toxic wastelands to uncover ancient alien secrets. Sounds like a normal Tuesday to me. Though next time, I might pack some stronger sunscreen. The medical bay filled with the crystalline equivalent of laughter, a shimmer of colors that danced through the crew members' forms. They were finally beginning to understand that what they saw as extraordinary resilience was, to humans, simply another day at work. As the Council Elder's hologram faded, Captain Red turned to Marcus. "You have taught us something important, Human Thompson. Sometimes the strongest adaptation isn't developing immunity to hostile conditions. It's developing the tenacity to push through them anyway." Marcus nodded, already thinking about the next toxic world they might explore. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't just their ability to survive in hostile environments. It was their stubborn insistence on treating the impossible as merely inconvenient and the lethal as simply uncomfortable. In a universe full of specialized adaptations, being too stubborn to stop might be the greatest adaptation of all.